I get why it's called cold open, but I think what we're really going for is more of a warm open,
Yeah, like a
warm introduction.
a warm introduction. That's what we're gonna call them from now on.
Instead of a cold open, it's a warm introduction.
Yeah, I think this is better.
I think so, because we don't want people to think of it as cold.
No, we're alive.
Open.
God damn it.
Yeah.
And the lights I have on me right now are set on warm.
Yeah.
And frankly, they are quite warm as well. And I can't turn a fan on because those are quite loud.
So we're doing everything we can to make this a warm open, is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Warm introduction.
All right. Warm introduction. All right. Enough of that. Let's do the true introduction.
The hot introduction.
This is so stupid.
All right.
Let's do the show. Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast mopping up Mike Flanagan's muddy footprints. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he just needed to find my key. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
I'm okay. Scott, do you have any birds? Any pet birds? Any beloved pet birds?
Oh my God, Petey. My birds' heads are falling off. It's a Dumb and Dumber reference for the children out there.
Pretty bird.
It's important that people know how influential that was to my entire life. We did name our very first podcast We've Got Worm, which is a direct Dumb and Dumber joke.
A joke that 4% of our listeners ever understood. And that's fine.
But worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Yep.
This week on the show, we are continuing our exploration of Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Bly Manor with episode 2 titled The Pupil, an episode that I do not think we will have much to say on in its relationship to Henry James' short story, The Pupil. Although maybe, Matt, we can pull some really intelligent gems out of there. I don't have any written in my notes, so these are going to be like some real-time gems, if so.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it has more to do with the turn of the screw than with The Pupil. But yeah, perhaps we will find some astonishing connections.
Yeah. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, actually. I was thinking about this before we started, and just this general idea of, I was listening back to last week's episode, and like, no one's probably going to be able to notice this but me, but like in between everything that's said was like my constant struggle of like what to talk about and what not to talk about in this episode. And what I've realized doing both Hill House and now Bly Manor is that like the pilots are really hard. And look, like pilots are really hard for writers and directors and actors and producers and all the people in Hollywood that work very hard to make these pilots. It's very, very hard for them. But what I want to say here is that pilots are really hard for me too, okay? Because like they're setting up so much stuff and I can't talk about any of it unless you talk about it first. And that's just really hard for me. And I feel like no one appreciates how difficult this is for me specifically.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted everyone to know that.
Everyone take a moment and appreciate the undue burden that is put upon Scott every time we start a new show. It's very painful for him. But now we're past
so hard. Yeah. No, you're right. We're past it. We're in episode 2. And now like almost immediately we're starting to get answers to questions. We're starting to see things that were being set up. Maybe some stuff you picked up on in the first episode, some stuff you didn't. We're starting to see that move forward, and there's just a ton to talk about in this episode. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation a whole lot. I did just want to mention one quick thing before we get into the episode proper. There is a new show on HBO called Welcome to Derry. I actually hate that they just kind of threw it in front of that show. That it bothers me. I wish it was just called Welcome to Derry. Right. I wish they just had like faith that people would find the show without having to put the word it in front of it in big letters. But they're also putting Pennywise like all over the marketing. So I guess I get it. The point is, for those of you that have been following us for a long time, we of course spent a long time on our other podcast, Kingslingers, talking about Stephen King, The Dark Tower. We eventually covered the novel It as well. And so we just felt it was fitting we had to come back and cover this new television show. So I just wanted to announce here, if you didn't know already, that I will be covering It, Welcome to Derry, an episode at a time with our good friend and frequent guest, Kim C. She's going to come kind of guest co-host for us for the next, I believe it's 10 weeks. I believe it's a 10 episode series. So for the next 10 weeks, Kingslingers is going to be back with an episode a week, just talking about that show. I don't know how in depth we're going to go. We're basically giving ourselves 24 hours after we watch the episode to collect our thoughts. And then we're going to get together and podcast about it. So I think it's be more like a real-time reaction type show than in depth like this show is. But I think it's going to be good fun. And I can't wait to chat with Kim about it. And maybe Matt, we can get you on the back end after the whole season is done. We can get you to get your overall thoughts on It, Welcome to Derry.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I would love to do that. Some people ask why I'm not doing it with Scott. I don't have time to watch another show and do another podcast in addition to everything else. Scott came up with an equation to calculate how many podcasts you can do concurrently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was it? 5 minus the number of kids you have?
That is the equation. Yes. Yeah. And of course, I have 2 children, so I can do 3 podcasts a week. So we have Doofcast, we have Flanagan's Wake, and now here's my third one is Kingslingers. Yep. Matt, unfortunately, had to have a third child. And so that just knocks him right out of the running.
Yeah. So, that's why. That's the reason.
So you childless people out there, where are your 5 podcasts? Get on it.
That's what I've been saying.
Yeah. All right. Check out that on our Kingslingers feed. You can find it. Just search Kingslingers and you'll find it. Or just check us on Instagram. We have links to it there, everything.
Yep.
We look forward to that. Hope you guys enjoy it. The first episode, I believe, will be out by the time you all are listening to this. All right, Matt, let's get into episode 2 of Bly Manor, titled The Pupil. This, of course, was also released on October 9th, 2020, as all 9 episodes of the show were, because Netflix does this binge drop thing that I still don't really love, but that's why we're not doing it, Matt. We're forcing everyone to wait a whole week between our episodes. Ha!
Yeah, no binge drop for you.
This episode was written by Jamie Flanagan, that is Mike's brother, and was with Laura Penny and Rebecca Klingel as story editors. It was directed by Kieran Foy. As we mentioned last week, the first episode of the show is the only one that is going to be directed by Mike Flanagan. So here is Kieran Foy here to step up for episode 2. The episode was still edited by Mike Flanagan and Brian Jeremiah Smith, and it was once again shot by Maxime Alexandra. I'm going to get that name right. I even put the pronunciation guide in here and I still fumbled on it as I was saying it. But that is Flanagan's DP for this episode once again. And Matt, so this is, I think the way to get into this is maybe kind of talk about the structure of the show a little bit. So one thing that became very apparent to us very immediately in Hill House is that show, at least for the first half of it, had a pretty defined structure to it, that each episode was going to zoom in on one member of the Crane family, and we were going to bounce back and forth between flashback and present day stuff with that family member. It was not immediately apparent to us whether Bly Manor was going to follow a similar structure or not. I think in episode 2, we can kind of say that maybe we've got the outlines of a similar structure there. I think it's safe to say that this is a Miles episode, right? This is an episode focusing on young Miles. We do a flashback in this episode back to his time at boarding school and how he actually got kicked out of boarding school. I do think it's an interesting thing to point out here is that the way this flashback is structured is, I think, it's both different from how Hill House structured flashbacks, and it's different from how a lot of shows tend to structure flashbacks. Like a lot of shows do like the Lostian structure, which is like, we're going to go back in time and then we're going to tell 2 concurrent stories, one in the present, one in the past with this flashback, and we're going to bounce back and forth between each of those, and both of those stories are going to culminate at the end of the episode in some fitting thematic climactic way. That is not what this show does, right? We have a flashback in this episode. It's about half the episode, but it is just like smack dab in the middle of the episode. We flash back, we sit with Miles throughout his entire experience in board school, and then and only then do we flash back, or do we go back to the present, and we don't go back to the flashback. So a little bit of a different structure. I don't know what to make of it. I'm curious what you make of kind of how the show is declaring its structure here in episode 2.
Yeah, I had the feeling that we were going to do that, right? The first episode usually doesn't quite follow the same pattern as the rest because it has a lot more legwork to do in terms of getting us, getting all the pieces in place.
Yeah,
but it felt like we very explicitly sort of zoom in on Miles as he's staring wistfully out the window, and then we, like you said, we get his entire flashback. It's told very much as a narrative. This is the tragedy of what happened at boarding school, and it doesn't really leave anything to the imagination. Like, I'd be surprised if we got another flashback to boarding school. Like, that felt like the self-contained story of what happened at boarding school and why he was expelled, right? So so it does seem natural that like we will go through all of our relevant main characters, get flashbacks for them, and learn like how did they end up here, or the typical. I mean, I think it'll likely follow a similar structure of Haunting of Hill House, where the characters we most want to see information from, or the ones who have the most information, are the ones that will get the last.
Sure.
But I was noticing, we have 9 episodes, and we basically have only 6 people in the house, I think. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't quite. Let's take out the first and the last episode of the show, so that'll be 7 body episodes. That's still one episode too many. So I am kind of wondering, maybe one of our characters gets a couple of flashback episodes, or maybe I'm overinterpreting the structure and it's going to be more flexible.
I mean, what I will say is we also have some ghosts in the house that true. May be flashback worthy themselves. We don't know. Sure.
What ghost?
Yeah, I do think it's you didn't notice any of them at all of this episode. For the record, our friend the Plague Doctor is back with a vengeance in this episode. He's all over it once again. Of course, there are some other background ghosts that we see as well. Some of them the show telegraphs to us, like the creepy doll-faced kid in the cellar, and of course the obvious ones like the woman in the attic as well.
Right,
which there are still background ones everywhere.
Yeah, and then there was the one in the hallway to the kitchen.
Yes.
I did want to remark on the creepy doll-faced kid in the pile of dolls, because I kind of debated whether I wanted to do this or not, because I felt like it would break my immersion. But I just, you're watching the pile of dolls, and at the last second you see this small movement, and it's too fast and it cuts away too quickly to really see what it was, other than like, okay, there was someone in that pile. So I just flipped back 30 seconds so that I could like put my eyes on exactly the spot where the movement happened and just like see if I could get a better read on it. And the truth is I didn't really. I mean, if there is a face there, it's kind of a messed up face, or it's wearing like a wig or something. Anyway, long story short, I couldn't help myself. I was too curious. I tried to see what was going on in that shot, but it was very creepy. That's one comment, by the way, just general comment about this episode, is it was very effectively creepy. There was a lot of creepy stuff prior to the hide and seek game, but then when the hide and seek game started, it just went to 11, and it was the creepiest thing ever.
Which I know we're going out of order here.
Yeah.
But I really must question the qualifications of a caretaker of children that allows them to play hide and seek at nighttime in a creepy giant house. It just like at least set the limitations of things like you can't go in the attic.
Yeah.
Like
it's a huge house, right? Yeah.
It's so big, and it was pitch black.
Yeah. I mean, generally and also, just like a house like that one in the dark, in a normal, like in my house, there's only so many places you can really hide, because like a person can't really fit. But like this is a giant house. You don't even know the house that well. Yeah. Anyway,
I also struggle with this with my son all the time, where he wants to play hide and seek and he wants to switch whose turn it is to hide and to seek. And he's obviously much smaller than me and has many, many hiding places in my house. Mm-hmm. I, as a full grown and also rather large adult, there's a very limited amount of places I can hide in this house.
Yeah.
And he knows them all.
Yeah. Bathtub again.
Yeah, basically
You got me.
in the bathtub. There's actually, so I use things against him because we have some doors in our house that have like the child-proof thing on them. So I don't go behind those doors because that would be cheating. But like my kids, this is a complete waste of time and an episode that's already going to be long, but here we go. I've committed now. My kids have like a Jack and Jill bathroom. And so my son's entrance to the bathroom, because we don't want him like waking up in the middle of the night and just playing in the bathtub and stuff like that. He has a potty in his room. It's okay, guys. So we have one on his door, but like I went in through my daughter's room, which doesn't have that, and just like hid in that bathroom next to his door, where if he were to just open the door from his room, he would see me immediately, but he would never think to check the other way. It's my brilliant spot. I stayed there for like 20 minutes and then he got really, really frustrated and yelled at my wife to come find me. But no, the point is, what were you thinking, Danny? This is a terrible game. Like, maybe like we can play any game you want, and then Flora goes hide and seek. Maybe say any other game that you want.
Well, it's interesting. So, it's interesting that they picked hide and seek, because then they like immediately chose to take it in a dark direction where Miles tries to strangle her and she's like got her ghost friend behind her. And
oh gosh, we have to talk about that moment. Again, we're going totally out of order here, but one of my favorite moments in the episode was Flora up in the attic hiding behind a very conspicuously placed chest, which of course, if you've been following along with Henry James, you know about a chest. And she's hiding behind the chest. She's humming along to the song that the music box is making, that there's no way she can hear, which is creepy enough already. And then there's a wailing ghost woman behind her making the same noise, and she just casually turns around and goes shh. And it's such an upending of expectations that like it almost stops you dead, because like I think we it's fair to say that we knew after the first episode that the children know about what's happening in this house vis-a-vis ghosts, right? Like the show didn't come out and explicitly say it, but like I think it's true that we knew that on some level. I think that kind of totally upends our understanding of their relationship to these ghosts, because up until that point it seemed like fear and care, and like maybe that's the reason Flora is telling people like we can't be up at night, we can't go wandering around at night, even you, Miss Clayton, even you can't do that. And then there's a ghost in the attic crawling up on her, and she's just very casually, nonchalantly, not scared at all, not threatened at all, tells it to shut up. That completely changes our whole understanding of the dynamic here.
Yeah. I love that moment so much. It immediately makes you think about in the first episode when she keeps looking over Danny's shoulder at something behind her and Danny's like and can't see it, and makes you think like, okay, so she's got at least one ghost who is her friend. That doesn't, I think, mean all of the ghosts are her friends. And no. I think we strongly suspect that some of them are actively antagonistic, and maybe this is just the one that is friendly. We have the letter she sent to school, obviously, which shows two scary ghosts and then herself crying in the corner. So there's at least two of them. And I think it's interesting because one of the more antagonistic ghosts, I'm thinking is Quint, played by Luke from the previous show.
Correct. Yeah.
Because he's the one who's looking balefully in the window and grinning evilly.
So, it is so remarkable to me. This is Oliver Jackson Cohen, who played Luke in the first show. He is such like a fluffy, like lovable, like even as a drug addict, like you just kind of can't help but like feel bad for him and just want to give him a hug. And he plays that version of a character so well. And like we haven't seen a lot of Quint in the show so far. We've just seen him like ghostily look through a window and smirk, right? But yeah, like that, he's got that look down where it's such an ominous look. And of course, everything that the show is doing around that, every time Danny sees him, the sound cuts out completely. We're just Danny's breathing. Like the show is doing overtime to make us feel this feeling of dread around him. But man, that smirk on his face is just so effective.
Yeah. And then it leaves me unsure, like, was the ghost in the attic? Is that Miss Jessel, or is that some other ghost? Right? I haven't quite pinned down the iconography of the different ghosts. Like that one isn't almost like a floral dress. Also, one thing is like her face seems kind of messed up.
Yeah.
And it's dark. It's really dark in that part of the episode, so it's hard to really tell what you're looking at. But
yeah, this is one of those things that I'm debating whether or not to just come right out and say this. But I think technically the show shows it to you, so I'm not like spoiling anything for you. We see in the music box a picture of Peter Quint and Rebecca Jessel. Rebecca Jessel is a black woman, and we do see there is a brief when Danny is walking through the hide and seek sequence. There is a ghost, I believe, standing in the classroom section of the house. There's a ghost that's behind her that we see like in there and then move away.
Yeah,
rather dramatically. That is a ghost of a black woman.
Yeah.
So like that I don't think that's Jessel. Like I'm just gonna say it. That's Rebecca Jessel.
Right. And I also see what's funny is now I can't put my finger on where my brain picked this up, but I had this association that like the Miss Jessel ghost was wearing a black dress and like a dress that kind of goes out, and that's what that woman was wearing too. Whereas the woman in the attic was not wearing a black dress at all. She was wearing a much lighter colored dress. So yeah, I mean there's all these interesting things happening that we're being given these little breadcrumbs. It's kind of fun to put it all together. I'm enjoying that aspect of things.
Yeah. There's other things I could tell you that I think I'm going to hold off on for now. But yeah, I mean, there's stuff that the show has shown you that at this point you can make some connections. But I'll don't have to say everything right now.
Yeah, I wanted to. You remarked on the use of sound and the cutting out everything. One thing I noticed is when Miles is climbing the tree and the priest is ringing the bell to bring all the kids in. It's really interesting because he's clearly like shouting something like, everybody come in, whatever. But you don't hear his voice at all, but you do continue to hear the bell just as loud. And it's a really kind of eerie, unsettling feeling that and it's like the idea of the bell ringing. It's like, the bell as an indicator of death.
Yeah, I mean, I think the use of sound in this show as a whole has been excellent so far. I mean, one thing that I think Flanagan in general does really well is understand when sound and score are important and when to drop them out. And like in both the first episode, and I think he talks about this in the director's commentary, the first episode, but it's here again in this episode. There's a lot of great usage of score in these shows, and I think the score of Hill House that we see again repurposed in Bly Manor is so effective and so emotional, and it really brings out the emotion in you. But the places in which the show drops the score out, like basically the entire hide and seek sequence is just no music, and it's just Danny wandering through the house. We're hearing every creak. We're hearing the wind. We're really, really accentuating the silence and the solitude and the oppressive feeling of the darkness. And you don't need dramatic musical stings to really punch the scares up. Like I think there is maybe like when the ghost of Jessel like walks by, I think there's like one maybe slight like musical sting, but it's not like a big like cause you to jump in your seat sound. It's just like a quick introduction of music where there wasn't any anymore, and that's it. And it's just like he's really relying on the fact that like I think being quiet and being silent is going to be much more effective than if we're making you pop out of your seat in fear every time something happens. And like, yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I've read and I know has been said about this show is that like a lot of like the horror heads that go to horror shows and movies to be scared specifically, one of the big complaints they have about Bly Manor is it's not as scary as Hill House. And I think it's not as scary as Hill House in like a lot of the very traditional quote unquote horror ways. But I find this show incredibly creepy, incredibly disconcerting, incredibly uncomfortable, and horrifying in all the ways that I quite enjoy. So I'm not ready to say like this is scarier than Hill House was, but I thought this episode was delightfully uncomfortable.
Yeah.
in many ways.
It's very much, we already talked about the idea that there's a big part of it that's the flashback, and then, but like stylistically, the two halves felt very different. We have the first part of the episode. Well, okay, there's a lead up into the flashback, and then the flashback, and it's not really very scary at all. Although there is some tension.
Yeah,
it's quite a bit of tension actually, but and maybe a little creepy when that the kid is wandering around the church or the chapel while the priest is in the other room and killing the dove and everything. But then it just when it turns it on, it really turns it on. I mean, I was thoroughly creeped out. And part of it is like I think I really didn't know where things were going. I feel like it's this show is really more of a mystery maybe than Haunting of Hill House was in some ways. I think at least in the Haunting of Hill House, we kind of knew what the question was, right? The question is like, okay, what exactly happened on the night that the family left Hill House and the mother died? That was the question that you have front and center from the beginning. In this one, I'm less even sure what the questions are. I'm like, okay, well, why did Jessel and Quint die is one question, but also like, well, who are the other ghosts that are in this house? What is the history of this house beyond that? We really have no idea. Who are the other dead that are being mourned by the other characters?
Mm-hmm.
Like each one of these other characters who's in the house seems to have at least a hint of some kind of backstory that we're not being shown. I think in this episode we get a little bit more from the gardener, where she's kind of like a misfit with the others. She's kind of like provocative and she's kind of got some like raw emotionality under the surface. I feel like she also has lost someone. Is what we're gonna learn with her.
Sure.
I don't know why I say that specifically, other than the roses thing, where it's like she's growing the roses for some reason. The only thing that really jumps to mind there is she's growing the roses so that she can cut them and put them at someone's grave, possibly.
Sure.
There's a lot going on there. I think one thing we keep like touching on and then moving away from that I want to focus on a bit is just that the interlude at the boarding school. Like,
no, I figured we'd spend most of our time in the episode about that because it's I think the focal point of the episode. It's a pretty big, huge amount of time spent on trying to figure out kind of the mystery that is Miles, who is a character that I think flashes between very sympathetic and sad to disturbing and uncomfortable, seemingly at whim.
And I think one great thing about that sequence is it sort of thoroughly puts us on his side after we've watched that, but still makes us not totally comfortable that he's going to make good choices.
Yeah.
Like there's a fun dichotomy there where it's like, I'll tell you my experience of watching it, I guess, because I think
go for it.
Like, you're very curious, like what happened to get him expelled, and you meet this priest character, and I don't know if this is just me or if this is intended by the show, but you have the element of boarding school and you have the element of a priest character, and we're very biased to see boarding schools as terrible places where children get abused. And this isn't a typical Mike Flanagan thing, but it is a kind of typical narrative thing to have a priest be an abuser. Yeah. So I was immediately, and then you see the priest ask him to stay after class to talk to him, and I was like, oh God, the priest is going to try to exploit him, and this is going to be terrible. And I was like pleasantly surprised, and I feel perhaps fair to say misdirected, to learn it's like, no, this priest actually is a great guy, a loving,
like the greatest guy.
Yeah,
he's so great.
He's a forgiving, loving priest. He's like everything you want out of a priest. He's trying to reach out to this kid. Why? Oh, it's because he knows the kid has suffered all these terrible traumatic losses, and he feels extreme sympathy for the kid, and wants to help him, wants to meaningfully actually help him, and is trying to, and is even willing to forgive and overlook his lashing out Like so anyway, all of this to say, like, good job, show. You gave me a curveball. And then, he jumps out of the tree, and this is where I just started to kind of become perplexed, to the point of maybe eventually feeling mildly frustrated, of just like, why is he doing these things? Like, what is causing him to do these seemingly random acts of lashing out? Because your read on him is not like, oh, well, he's just like an angry kid. He's full of anger and he's a little psychopath. It's like, no, he's not. Like I feel like I have a pretty firm read on this character, and he doesn't seem to be just a little, Damien just lashing out for the sake of screwing with people. And even when he says that about the dove toward the end, I'm like, no, you're lying. And that to me was the skeleton key that actually kind of caused me to finally ask in my own brain, like, well, why is he doing it? And then it was funny, because as soon as I asked it of myself, why is he doing this? Like, instead of just having it be a vibe, I was like, why is he doing it? I was like, oh, so he can get expelled. Because he has some reason to want to be expelled. And then pretty quick after that, you see the letter that says, so I figured it out, like, 60 seconds before it was revealed to me.
That's so great.
But I think basically the show just worked on me exactly the way it intended to,
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the really interesting things happening in this show, at least so far, is this idea that these people find these people and they're definitely trying to help them, but they're helping them with the problem that they think they have. Like, Father Stack is an incredible character, and I think if we want to talk about the relationship to the pupil as a short story, the relationship here is the closest one, right?
Yeah.
We have the teacher and the student, and Father Stack is kind of desperately trying to build a bond with this kid in such a way that would resemble the pupil and teacher relationship that existed in that short story. But Miles is kind of constantly pushing him away, and part of Stack's failure in this is that he thinks he's helping him with a problem that he's not necessarily having. And while, I mean, it's of course true that Miles is mourning the loss of his parents, he's also experienced this thing with Miss Jessel that is incredibly disturbing, and he is messed up, and he's dealing with these things. That is not actually what's going on. And I think that actually it's really funny. We'll get to this a little bit later, but I think this is echoed once again in the scene where Danny sees Flora put on the glasses and like freaks the fuck out about it, sprints out of the house and goes and just starts weeping outside, and bumps into Jamie the gardener. And Jamie the gardener is once again trying to help Danny with the problem that she thinks she's having, which is that she's just overwhelmed by the responsibility and by the kids and by Bly and all these things, where Danny's real problem is something very specific and acute to whatever is happening to her with this mystery glasses mirror ghost that's constantly haunting her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is definitely a trend of people like attempting to help people with their problems, but not being fully aware of what their problem actually is. But back to that scene, I think it is so clever the way it's set up that you kind of just take on the role of Father Stack, and you're assuming that Miles is just lashing out because he's confused and angry and hurt and sad, and so beating up a kid. But I think you're so right that in the middle of that is all this, like, you only act like that type of person when you're doing the act, and then afterwards you're acting like a completely different person. And then yes, the jumping out of the tree doesn't really match out. It's really clever how they set this up, Matt, because if you recall in the very beginning of the first scene in the flashback, Father Stack welcomes them all back to class and says, "We're all here, except for young Brandon, who is not going to be joining us this semester." Another kid happens, like, "What happened to him? Did he get sick?" And the father answers, "No, he just took a rather bad fall, actually, and he's at home recovering." And that is literally where Miles gets the idea to jump out of a tree to try to get sent home. So like all the connections are there. You just don't pick up on them because, again, you're coming at this from a different point of view, and different assumptions on what's going on. And I think that's actually a clever thing that the flashback does, because I really love that first scene, that scene in the classroom when Father Stack is teaching about the story of Jesus and banishing the demon, banishing Legion. And I think there's a lot going on in that story that is interacting with what we're doing in this episode and perhaps the show, right? There's a lot of things that's setting up, and maybe we can just talk about them and then pair them off individually. Like, one of the things we get this idea is that mankind is fallible. And the reason the priest brings up the fact that mankind is fallible is this idea that you have three different people. You have, I believe it's John, Mark, and Matthew, or is it John, Luke, and three different apostles telling the same story, but they have different interpretations of the same story. Two of them say the demon's name was Legion. One of them says there was two people and they didn't name them. And just this idea that differing perspectives, different people experience the same thing and have different perspectives on it. They remember things differently, and that distorts their telling of a thing. That's something we're introducing to the story. The one big thing we're introducing to the story is this idea that this is about possession, right? Like, this is a story about a demon possessing a man, and then that demon being banished from the man into an animal, and that animal being drowned in. And I think I'm going to point this out to you. When Father Stack tells the story, he says the pigs drowned in a lake.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says the sea. It doesn't. The Bible does not say a lake. But this is, I think, this show trying to connect dots for you specifically by using similar words.
Yeah. So this might be completely random, but I was thinking about like the fact that Miss Jessel, drowned. It's like, maybe this is like the Exorcist type situation where you bring the possessing entity into your body and then kill yourself to try to conquer it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have no real reason to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we do have to point out is just that Miles seems very interested in the idea that demons need permission,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Legion needed permission to go into the pigs. He then makes the assumption, okay, so did Legion need permission to go into the man then?
Mm-hmm.
And Father Stack says, yes, of course he did. He did. We are not compelled, is this idea. And it's a great idea that comes back around in the flashback itself, where Miles is countering Father Stack's arguments against him as like, you're not acting this way. You're not being yourself. You're not acting this way yourself. And he spits that phrase back in his face.
Mm-hmm.
We are not compelled. I'm doing this because I choose to.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting thing we're setting up. And then I think this recurring beat about fairness, I think, is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's introduced in the story, because what the story comes to is this idea that Father Stack basically says the only innocents in the world are animals. Like there are babies before they're conceived and animals. Everyone else, this is a very Catholic thing, right? The original sin, we're all guilty of it. We're all sinners. We're all tainted in some way. There is no such thing as innocence. It's very Catholic. But then Miles sees this and then interprets the story as, well, the pigs were innocent then, and Jesus allowed the pigs to be possessed by these demons and then murdered. So you murdered the innocent. That's not fair. And then Father Stack's response to that is basically like,
oh,
yeah, I mean, you're right. The Lord works in mysterious ways, which is just the ultimate get out of jail free card.
These were really shitty pigs. Look, you don't understand.
But it does introduce this idea of fairness and what is and is not fair. And we see this beat hit several times in this episode. We see him point out it's not fair there. There's a moment where he asks the father, my parents aren't coming back, are they? And then he says in a very ominous tone, it's not fair. Why do the bad ones come back? Why did none of the good ones ever get to come back? Which is just very ominous and wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think the fairness comes to the present time as well, where Miles is complaining about the fairness of his punishment for what was done to Danny, that he has to be the one to mop up the footprints.
Right.
And he complains about fairness there.
Yeah. Which again he's almost certainly right, because he probably locked her in the closet for some really good reason. And also the footprints are probably ghost footprints. Yeah. So he's not responsible for any of this. I mean, basically the whole episode just amounts to making you feel incredibly bad for this kid who's like essentially sacrificed his future to protect his sister. And now is continues to carry this cross, and yet, and this is what I love about the show. At the same time doing that, you have these incredibly creepy scenes where he like brushes the hair back over Danny's ear, and then
puts her in a chokehold
Yeah.
at the end of the episode,
Right.
where you're just like, how are we supposed to feel about
Yeah.
this kid?
It is interesting because you're not sure if it's like, is he calculatedly trying to drive her to leave? To be
Mhm.
like, I mean, honestly, I was thinking when he did the hair thing, I was like, okay, he noticed that she didn't like it when she caught me peeping earlier,
Sure.
which maybe he wasn't intentionally peeping, but she really didn't like that. So I'm going to kind of push on that and like see if I can disconcert her and make her just not like me, and then she'll want to leave. And you know, choking her, I think, was crossing the line. But at the same time, just based on everything else we see in the episode, it's like probably he had a good reason for, like, he's trying to scare her away from something, or you know, I don't think this is a kid who's lashing out blindly.
Yeah.
He strikes me as the Jamesian too pure for this world child of light, just like the character. Well, just like one interpretation of the character in the book,
Sure.
and very much like the character in the Pupil, where it's like, look, this is just an innocent kid who
Yeah.
did nothing wrong, and he's kind of trying to do his best. That is, I think, the direction we're going to go, which is why he's definitely going to die.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a completely fair connection to make. And I think you're absolutely right that the episode spends a good half its running time showing Miles do objectively uncomfortable and bad things, and then filling in the context for why he was doing these things the entire time. And then we jump forward to the present, and Miles continues to do these things that from an outside observer look weird, disconcerting, uncomfortable, and even mean, and go, okay, well, maybe that's what he's doing again. And I think that's a fair conclusion to reach, is that, okay, well, maybe he's just once again trying to get something to happen for the sake of something. So I think, saying that maybe he recognizes Danny's in danger here, and he doesn't want her to be here anymore, and so he's just trying to make her quit. And maybe that's his goal. And I think that's I think that is a definitely a good read on what the show is seemingly telling us through the flashback, or one of the things the show is telling us through the flashback.
He also seems to really like this rear naked choke maneuver as a. Which, I mean, other than just like, yeah, okay, he did it twice in the episode. It's like, I don't know, maybe he like watched somebody murder somebody by choking them to death, and this is like something that he has. I don't know. It's just like, you notice a young child tries to choke people in a very technique wise correct choking movement. You're like, oh, okay, maybe he saw that somewhere. There were a couple of points you made as we were going back and forth that I want to hit in reverse order, because that's a good way to have a conversation.
Go for it.
The first is, you mentioned the idea of you know, the permission, and I just love the dialogue of between him and the priest, where he asks the priest about, you know, do they need permission, and the priest is trying to make a very wise point about how, you know, no, we control our own actions, and the demons, which are quasi metaphorical in, you know, Catholic teaching, you have to give them permission, meaning you have to be the one who chooses to go down the bad road to give to let the demons in, right? He's trying to impart wisdom, and demons are kind of a metaphor.
Yeah.
Although he probably also believes in demons because he's a Catholic priest. But the point is, he's trying to be metaphorical, but the boys can be completely literal. The boys' questions are completely literal about the mechanics of how demons work. And I just kind of thought that was a delightful piece of writing there.
Yeah, and this kid is doing such a fantastic job with this role. Benjamin Evan Ainsworth is his name. We'll say it again. Like all throughout that sequence is this really great cutting back and forth between Father Stack, who's played by a man named Jim Piddock, who just does a remarkable job with this character. You know, it's just like this basically guest appearance for this episode, just to kind of come in here and be this warm-hearted light. And I do want to talk about, let's put a pin in that, because I want to talk about Flanagan and Catholicism, at least religion, in some of the stuff we've talked about. But we'll talk about that in a sec. But it's great back and forth, as you said, and like the look on Miles' face as he's processing the information that Father Stack is sharing with him is so fascinating, because he's like really intently like listening. It's a type of listening where you can tell you're like your eyes aren't looking at them, but your ears are kind of tilted towards them because he's like almost leaning forward and listening. And in a few places he nods a little bit, and in a little place he shakes his head a little bit. Like he's really like, you're absolutely right. He's not taking this in the metaphorical approach. He's not taking this in the, yes, we all have choices in life, people. We all make our own choices. That is the gift that God has granted us. Free will, the option to choose. He's like, okay, yeah, okay, demons, this is what we do. Yeah. And it makes sense. He's a person that's experiencing some sort of ghostly presence in his house, that he would be paying very close attention to what the rules are and aren't with these things. Yeah.
The priests will know the rules, right?
Yeah.
It's a good assumption for a kid to make.
I find their relationship so absolutely tragic. And again, I think this is a way that matches the Pupil, in that, like, I think Miles really appreciates everything this man is doing for him, and that he is legitimately trying and he is caring about him. I think that he gives him the John, I think it's 16:22 verse, about just like grief and sadness, and like this is only temporary. Like you like joy waits for you at the end of all this thing. Like earnest belief that your parents are in a better place. He's really trying, and I think there's a level in which Miles really, in any other situation, would perhaps really bond with this man and like and really develop a strong like teacher-student relationship with, but that's just kind of not meant to be. And that's like, the tragedy of this whole thing is at the very end of it all, when he is getting expelled and he's sitting out in the hall and Father Stack just walks out there, and Miles just earnestly says, I'm sorry, Father, I just had to find your key. Which is a great turn of phrase that we see here, that he mentions a couple times, that like that it turns out to mean I need to find what I can do to you to get what I want.
I needed to find your key.
And it's just so tragic, and like Stack is just like so heartbroken and disappointed in him.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, you don't know at the moment, but you immediately learn what the reason for all that was.
Right.
And it is really heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Even like Stack is willing to forgive him. That was another beat I noticed twice in the episode, is that Stack is basically willing to extend him basically endless forgiveness if he's willing to show any shred of remorse.
Yeah, which is kind of what that's being Christian, right?
Yeah,
like that's like
right.
That's supposed to be the way it works.
Yeah, and I exactly right. Like that was very Christian. Very. I mean, you get the sense like he would have even forgiven him. Just, I get the feeling that's just a man who has infinite forgiveness, but he's like, I can forgive you, but I can't defend you against the school if you're not going to give me anything, you know?
Well, and his key was not the act. His key was the lack of conscience about it. Is like that's the thing Stack mentioned several times, is like the thing that separates us from the bad things in the world is our conscience, that we do a bad thing and we feel bad about it, that it's like, I think the thing he says while he's talking to him is these things that we do, they stay with us, they affect us, they become part of us. And Miles' like insistence on making it clear that or projecting that none of this bothers him.
Right.
The only thing he's sorry about is that he didn't do something more monstrous, is attacking Stack exactly where he lives, in the exact thing that, like, as long as it's his key, right? As long as you show forgiveness, as long as you show remorse, as long as you show that you are a human being, that you are one of God's creatures and not something bad and evil, I will be there and I will support you.
Yeah.
And so what Miles has to do ultimately is demonstrate the opposite of all that.
Yeah. And so the moment this pairs with is, I think, actually earlier in the episode,
Well, I forgive you.
when Danny says, well, I forgive you, but I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Which is such a great concept to put into this show, especially in this role of, you know, of the caretaker character, the governess character, right? Where it's like she knows there's something else going on here. I doubt she suspects at this point that it's actual ghosts, but she knows the kids aren't being square with her. And so she can forgive them, but forgiveness sometimes isn't enough, I think, is maybe the reality of it. Just like forgiveness wasn't enough with the priest, it's like, well, there's kind of a limit there if you have no contrition. In this case, forgiveness is limited by complete lack of honesty. Like I can look past your childish foibles, but if you're going to continue to insist on lying to me, that, you know, and I think Miles is kind of looking for her key, right? He's being creepy to her. He's strangled her, and maybe he's going to realize, like, oh, okay, well, her key seems to be honesty, so I'll just keep lying to her. And you know,
yeah, and going out of his way to prevent her from getting some of the truth. That's one thing we didn't talk about in the part of the beginning of the episode before we cut to the flashback, is that she's demanding an explanation from the two of them. Flora goes down to pick up the lady in the lake doll and hand it to her as if to offer some sort of explanation. And Miles' response to that is to grab it out of her hand and sprint down the hallway and toss it down the laundry chute as if to end the conversation there immediately. We're not, and that's the second time, right? Flora started talking about the lady in the lake, and we had this very pointed Flora that came from Miles. Is very like, so he is like actively stopping her every time she teeters too close to revealing some information to Danny. So you're right. You're totally right.
And it must be, I say must, but like, it really strongly seems like there's a good reason for this. Like, there's a good reason why he didn't just tell the priest, like, there's ghosts at my house. There's a good reason why they don't tell Danny there's ghosts in the house. Like the ghosts will probably do something horrible, and or you know, they probably saw this happen before. They probably told Miss Jessel, please help us, there's ghosts. And like this, and this is what happened to her, right? It was an Oculus situation where they were like, yeah, we're gonna do something about it. We're gonna get these ghosts, and then you don't get the ghosts get you.
I like that a lot, because I think one thing the show is doing, and I thought about this while you were talking about the difference between the way Danny handled Miles and the way Father Stack handled Miles. One of the things that I think the show is positioning is Danny is different and is dealing with these kids different from the way other people have. So we see the difference between Father Stack and her there. And then one thing Jamie does in the wonderful scene where the three like house employees are all sitting around relaxing. I love that whole sequence. I love every bit of it. But Jamie makes it clear that like this person is different from the rest of them. That like, you know, you, Hannah Gross, you take care of them. Owen feeds them. Miss Jessel, Rebecca coddled them. But this woman, she's different. She's handling this different. And I think that introduces some new excitement to maybe a play that we've seen play out before unsuccessfully. I think that's really, really cool. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
She's taking things the American way.
Yeah. How would you rate her between 0 and American?
Yeah.
That whole scene is just fantastic. I love getting to see those three actors just like together and in a place where they're all kind of relaxing a little bit. I loved that sequence.
I mean, I enjoyed that thematically in context of the short stories too, because James was this guy who was American, but there was like this contention in his soul where he spent most of his life in Europe. But I feel like there's something ineffably American about him, despite the fact that all of his stories feel like they take place. Actually, a lot of them take place in New England, in America, but a lot of them take place in you know, overseas too. So
I think he's definitely a person torn between those two realities and of who he is, and a lot of his writing is wrestling with that. I mean, I do think we thought this while we were reading the short stories, and I still think that a lot of the stuff he is doing in England with some of his stories is specifically poking holes and poking fun at some of the standards of society and these things that were in place at the time. So that feels like something that's very, I don't want to say that's very American to do, but it's very outsider looking in and looking at like, isn't this all a bit silly, actually? But
maybe this is a thesis I'm forming on the fly, but like James is an outsider to England, certainly, but I think by the end of his life, he was an outsider to America too.
Yeah.
And this gave him an eye into both societies that is unusual.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned a bit ago was the theme of people, you know, misperceiving a situation. And this is definitely an idea in Turn of the Screw.
Yes. Yes.
And, again, this is one of those places where we've taken a major concept from the story and we have reappropriated it in different ways. So the thing I'm specifically mentioning here is the thing which when we definitely talked about when we talked about the novel The Turn of the Screw. I don't know that we talked about it much last week, but just to reiterate, the idea that you can read the whole book as kind of a straightforward ghost story where this governess is terrified about the possible demonic or ghostly possession of these children by these evil former caretakers, or you can read it as her having a kind of psychotic break where she's getting increasingly paranoid and probably her behavior seems increasingly terrifying to the children, and then it ends with her actually suffocating one of the children to death and her not even realizing that she did it, would be the interpretation, right? So point being, like, the ambiguity of the interpretation, the way the story changes depending on who's telling it, because in that case it's the governess telling the story, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that's a theme that we're playing with quite a lot here, and possibly, I think likely, in fact, ways where the reality of what actually happened to Miss Jessel and Quint is going to be something that maybe is even played with. I mean, it would be kind of fun to get like a Rashomon sort of, like, different people have totally different perceptions of what actually happened in the house.
Sure.
I don't know if there's a lot of evidence that we're going to do that, but it definitely seems to be an idea that we're playing with.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. And I agree with you. It's a fun way of bringing that ambiguity of the turn of the screw into this story. And we are playing with Danny. I mean, I think we're being less ambiguous about the existence of ghosts in this world, just like The Haunting of Hill House did with Shirley Jackson's novel. It was just like, yes, there are ghosts in this world. We're establishing that. And I think that is true in this show as well. But I love, we are still like playing Danny as this, like, the governess character is someone that is kind of teetering on the edge of something, and we don't fully understand the why of it yet. I think the delightful thing about Henry James' novel was that it was like there was no why. We just some abstract, like, I don't know, something's wrong with her, we don't know what it is, and that really helped cement the uncertainty and the feelings that you got while reading it. We know a lot more about Danny. We understand a lot more about her as a person. We know there is a very specific event that is haunting her. We can make the assumption that we will learn what that is eventually. It would be weird to set all this up and then just never tell us that. So we're being a lot more specific about that kind of stuff this time, but we are still having moments of other characters watching her sprint out of the house crying for no reason. And I mean, we have the character of Jamie that finds her there. We already talked about this, but who seems very, very compassionate and understanding and says, like, I cry myself 3 to 4 times a day, which, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, right.
You're not okay either.
Exactly right. Like, she's saying that as like, haha, it's a joke, but it's like, okay, she's definitely also deeply upset about something, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of going on with ambiguity, and I love all this so much. Before we move away from the flashback, which you kind of already had, but I do want to spend some time talking about the direction of this episode, because as we mentioned, this is not an episode directed by Mike Flanagan. This is directed by a man named Kieran Foy. And there was a lot of stuff, especially in the flashback, that I really liked that felt, I don't know if it's fair to say felt Flanagan-y. I'm actually like really good at like looking at what a director is currently doing, and I'm like really bad at comparing styles against each other. So like I'm very uncomfortable saying like this episode felt like a Mike Flanagan episode still. I don't know, maybe it did. There was just some stuff in the episode that I really liked visually. The one thing is we talked about the scene where the father Stack finds the dove, and that is a oneer. I don't know if you noticed that, but from the time we get in that scene where father picks up the Eucharist cup and walks back, and then walks back out to the altar and finds the dove on the altar, that is all a oneer. That is a one-take scene in handheld. The camera is following him, I thought that was great. I thought that was a really fun way of like adding to the tension of the scene, is refusing to cut from it, and kind of doing everything in reveal. We have Miles running in the background in the dark, kind of just over the shoulder without any cuts, and then we have the slow. We watch as the father sees the dove as he walks up to it, but it holds from us. We're not allowed to see what it is until the camera finally pulls back and we see it. I just thought doing that as a oneer was very effective, and of course, like, oneer isn't like a Mike Flanagan exclusive thing, right? Of course, he did it in in that one episode of Hill House, but like, I just thought that like so far in the show we've had several gimmicks, we can call them, used over the course of these 2 episodes. We had the split diopter last episode, and we have this oneer used here. Just different camera techniques and directing techniques that I think have really enhanced the scenes, and I really liked it.
Yeah, it was cool. I was gonna mention at the top, like, it's interesting. This is the least Mike Flanagan episode of any Mike Flanagan TV show that we've talked about. I mean, what I mean is, he edited it. Obviously, he's like the showrunner and presumably did like the overall story treatment, but he didn't write this episode. He didn't direct this episode. He did, and so like one of the things that is in common is the DP, right? And I think that really jumps out in a lot of the nighttime scenes where the way things are lit and framed and shot, it felt very reminiscent of Haunting of Hill House, where it like, and it's like, that must be the DP's fingerprints, that I'm kind of noticing there.
Yeah, and I haven't seen a lot of the work of Kieran Foy. I think he directed Sinister 2, which I've definitely seen, but has been so long since I've watched it that I couldn't like tell you any specific directorial flourishes in that one. But I think like one thing that happens when you have a director come in, and I think he directs 2 or 3 of the episodes of the season, but when you have a director come into a show in which the showrunner directed the entire first season by himself, you're obviously going to bring your own thing to it, but you are also trying to, I don't want to say copy, but you're trying to match the look and feel of a show, right? Like that is there's a lot of people that work in TV that are like journeyman directors that will come in to TV shows and direct 1 episode, 2 episodes. They'll just come in, they'll do an episode, and they'll go off and work on another show and do an episode of that. And when you're that kind of director, your job is to come in and match the look of the show that you're working on. Like you don't want people watching a show to just go, this looks and feels completely different from the way the other one did. I mean, maybe sometimes you do if it makes sense for the story, but in this case, we don't want that. And so, like, I think that the highest compliment I can pay this guy is that this episode of the show looked really good. I thought felt very well directed, and felt like part and parcel with a Hill House show. Like this felt like just another haunting show. Like I bet you if I hadn't told you and if I hadn't known that Mike Flanagan didn't direct this thing, I wouldn't have been able to definitively conclude on that or not.
Yeah, I doubt that I would have been able to definitively conclude. I think a lot of Mike Flanagan's style is staying out of the way, of the actors doing a thing, you know. So, less cutting, longer shots.
He likes to do a slow push in, which we had some of those in this episode. We had the slow push in. Were there any monologues in this one? I guess Stack talked at length for a few times, but
I wouldn't say monologue. I mean, it almost felt like a monologue because you've got the boy just like almost like muttering things to himself that the priest doesn't even really hear.
Which by the way, speaking of directing though, like and cinematography, especially the use of light in the flashback scenes, I think was really effective. Especially, we enter the flashback by Miles sitting in the classroom looking out the window, which we can't even really see out the window. It's just bathed in this incredibly bright light. And there was one sequence, I think it was after he beat up the other kid, that Father Stack has him sitting in the classroom and he's sitting in one of the chairs, and the left side of his face is bathed in light from the windows that, again, we can't really see out. It's just light. And then the right side of his face is completely dark because there's no source of light coming from that side at all. The only source of light in the room is from the window. And I just love that, like this perfect dichotomy of Miles, which is this kid who is seemingly going back and forth between like, are you going to be good or are you going to be bad? Are you evil or are you kind? Like, who are you? And he's this kid in the middle, and it's like he's having a priest sitting there talking to him about like, this is not the way. Like you have a choice, you have an opportunity here. I understand these bad things have happened to you, but like you can do another path. And he's like split down the middle with the lighting. Just like, not, I mean, that's not like super complicated stuff, but it's just like solidly good stuff. I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. That was solid. Yeah, I mean the whole boarding school part does feel different, but a lot of that does come down to like the lighting and the kind of atmosphere of that building being very different from the atmosphere of the Bly building.
Can we talk about that for a bit?
Yeah,
because one of the things that I really picked up on this episode, I don't even think I picked up on it as much in last week's episode, but it is the isolation of this place.
Mm-hmm.
That Bly Manor is truly in the middle of nowhere. That these 6 characters are truly just kind of on their own here. It's just like, it feels so isolated. Like every time the character goes outside, it just feels like there's nothing. There's nothing but this house. There's nothing but this place. And so it's both isolated in space. I think it's very interestingly also isolated in time a little bit. Like this technically takes place in 1987, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are no TVs in this house. There are no radios in this house that we've seen, at least. That could change.
Mm-hmm.
The one piece of technology that exists in this house is the phone. That's the only piece of technology, and the phone seemingly doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
Or what is happening rather is someone is calling continuously and is never on the other line.
Yeah.
And it is a show that takes place in 1987, but outside of, I think, only Danny's clothes, could be any time.
Yeah.
Whenever. And I think all that adds to the isolation of this, that it just feels out of space and time. If like there's a moment at the very end of the episode when Danny sees Quint's reflection, sees Quint's ghost in the mirror, and rushes outside and like screams, "I'm gonna call the fucking police." And I laughed. I didn't even expect laughing. Just laughter came out of my mouth because like, you think the police are gonna come and help you? Like, what? You're alone. What are you talking about? The police? No, like, there's no one here to help you. You're like, and I didn't even realize I was feeling that way until that just happened to me. And I think this all part of the great work in that everyone's doing in making this place that just, it's beautiful, but it's also unbearable.
Also, like the way her scream kind of dies out and the camera looks out over this dark, open expanse of nothing, where there's clearly no one there, by the way, despite the fact that she ran outside. I mean, it basically is the scene from Turn of the Screw where she sees the guy outside of the window and then she runs outside to catch him, and he's not there and there's nowhere he could have possibly gone, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, it was a ghost. Except in this case, it definitely was a ghost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the show kind of confirms that with us, by the way, by showing the kids notice the ghost as well. Like we have Flora in the attic with the ghost, and then the final sequence of this episode is the ghost of Peter Quint not smiling at Danny, but smiling instead at Miles, to confirm that is a very clever way of communicating to the audience. Is like, yes, he is there. Actually, he is there. Other people are seeing him. Right. I think that matters, and I like that the show doesn't leave anything to chance there.
Yeah. It's funny. The thing I thought you were actually going to point out was the fact that she says "fucking," because despite the fact that they swore constantly in The Haunting of Hill House, which was like a contemporary show, like nobody really swears in this show because it's all like, I don't want to say never, but like it's almost always just like very like proper characters interacting with each other, or like in a professional context, or you've got people interacting with children, or literal priests, so there's just it was one of those moments where her screaming that did kind of like remind me, like it felt kind of vaguely incongruous because the whole setting, and you're right, the way everyone except her dresses, it makes it feel like this time capsule. That's great.
Yeah I love it, man. I love the look of this thing. I still can't get over the fact that the house is digital and not really there. It's not something I knew, and I have trouble believing it, even though I know it to be true.
Yeah. the interior of the house, I feel like, last week we said like it doesn't feel as creepy as Hill House, and it's definitely not kind of like, okay, so the Hill House seemed to be designed by like a madman to be intentionally terrifying.
Yeah.
Whereas this house is really much more of just like, well, it's an old manor, and those just kind of have a natural creepiness when it's nighttime, and that really jumped out this episode. And also, so we talked briefly about the fact that she goes into the cellar, but it's basically a normal cellar, except that it's full of a giant pile of terrifying dolls.
Let's just throw all our scary dolls down here in the corner of the cellar. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny you say that, but like that probably was like a thing that happened at some point when it's like, all right, there's obviously ghosts everywhere. We need to get all these dolls in one spot. Because I'm having trouble telling the ghosts from the dolls. Like, you're very pragmatic, right?
Sure, absolutely. It also doesn't help that you have a whole forbidden wing of the house that is just everything is covered in spooky white drapes. That there could be something under it at any and all times. It's great move, everyone. Yeah. Really great.
It's one of my life ambitions is to have a restricted wing of my house that no one is allowed into, and never explain why.
It's because there's a magic rose there.
Yeah, I'm glad you also were thinking about. I was thinking about that as soon as they introduced the concept of the forbidden wing. I was like, is that where the rose is?
I have a bone to pick with that movie though, because I don't believe the character of Belle would be more intrigued by the forbidden wing than the library she was just told about. Because they say, no, you can't go with the forbidden wing. Here, let's show you the library. And everything we know about Belle up until that point is that she loves books.
Yeah.
She just loves books. So I just feel like she'd go to the library first.
It's true.
And then maybe swing by the forbidden wing after dinner.
Interesting. I've never really thought about this, but I think you might be right.
It's a terrible movie.
I thought
Worst
she was
movie ever.
Wasn't she like sneaking away though? I don't know. Whatever.
So like she was sneaking away. They stop her, and to distract her, they say, "We'll show you or the library." And she goes, "Library? I just rewatched this movie. I don't have like a photorealistic memory of Beauty and the Beast." And they say, "Yeah, the library." And then they get excited that their plan to distract her works, and they march off without her. And then she just goes up the West Wing instead.
Yeah, she would have been totally nerd slammed by the library. You're right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Awful writing.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about some of the bit characters that haven't gotten a lot of time so far this week. How are you feeling about Hannah Gross, who is a character that has just been kind of behaving weirdly throughout these 2 episodes so far? And I don't think you have any idea why, or what to make of it whatsoever. The new thing we got this week is that she's staring at a crack in the tile in the kitchen. Eventually tells Jamie to come repair the crack in the tile in the kitchen. And Jamie comes in, and there is no crack in the tile in the kitchen. And we don't know quite what to make of that. Or her, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add. I noticed that. That was weird. The other thing that happens with her, with Miss Gross specifically, is when Danny is like, "Oh, I've got a surprise this evening," and I guess she's talking about the fact that she intends on kind of giving the kids a little breather from all the chores by playing hide and seek with them.
I do want to say I've got a surprise all lined up for you, for the kids. I planned this whole big surprise for them, and the whole big surprise is just you can play a game.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you did a lot of work to set up that surprise there, Danny.
Yeah,
but yeah.
She's trying to level set expectations with these kids. But like Gross's reaction of almost like terror, like nope, not gonna stay in. And I mean, to me it was just like she doesn't want to stay in the house at night.
Yeah,
that was my reaction.
I believe she lives in the house. I know Owen goes home to his mother. I believe Jamie goes home as well, but I believe Gross is a live-in caretaker.
That's interesting, because my assumption based on like the way that scene played out was that maybe she lives in like an outbuilding.
Maybe she lives on the property, but not in the house properly. Yeah, I think that could be.
I say that partly because like we see her very quickly after Danny screams into the night, and then I guess like runs and gets her. So it's possible that she just like ran to her bedroom. But I guess I just think it's interesting that we haven't seen her bedroom. We don't know where it is.
That's true. We did get a tour of the entire house, essentially.
Yeah.
But not where Miss Gross is hanging out. Yeah. Mrs. Gross. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe she lives in there's like a servant's quarters even. I mean, buildings like that used to have servant's quarters. I think it's kind of interesting because, Danny doesn't live in servant's quarters. She just lives in one of the main rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as a society, we've moved past the idea of servants' quarters in most houses. I think I don't actually know. Maybe there's plenty of people who have. Regardless, we don't know where she lives.
Yes, we do not know where she lives. That is correct. We don't quite know what to make of what's going on with her. And I do like there's a really interesting the conversation she has with Owen and Jamie, I think is a really interesting one. We already talked about the idea of what she says is you clean up after them, Owen feeds them, Rebecca coddled them, but this one does something different. We talked about that. The other thing, I think there's a moment where I think Jamie says she's a bit too pretty, isn't she though? Mm-hmm. Don't you think she's too pretty, Owen? And Owen just gets all fumbly and wonderful and flustered. And we haven't talked much about Owen yet, and I think it's because so far he's kind of just been a background character. I think what Rao Coley is doing with the character is really great, and I love the little thing he's got with Flora. That they just have this very adorable relationship between the two of them. But we haven't talked about him a lot yet. But
for assault and buttery,
I just love that whole conversation. And then Hannah is like, well, romances don't fare very well at Bly, do they? And there's a lot of very pointed editing and directing in those shots of going to a character. Like there's a moment where the camera cuts to Owen as he reacts to that, and we don't know what to make of that, but he reacts to that statement in a very specific way. Mm-hmm. And then we very quickly move on from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of mystery surrounding these three for sure.
Yep. More subtext there. Totally.
Mm-hmm. And then let's talk about Jamie a little bit. So I think you already talked about her huge, like overblown reaction to the flowers being cut. I thought that was really interesting, especially as it comes, you almost don't believe her. And I think you picked up on this already and you talked about this already, but like what she says is they weren't ready to be cut. And then when she realizes that was a bit overblown, she says, look, I just have a way I like to do things, and I really don't like when people do things other ways. But that kind of contradicts to the earlier in the episode when she seemed completely at ease and okay with Danny and the kids taking on her gardener duties in the garden. Mm-hmm. Like they were just digging stuff up, and she was like casually and chilly monitoring from a seat while drinking a G&T. Mm-hmm. Like she just didn't seem to care at all about that. So I think you picking up on maybe something to do with the flowers specifically was pretty apt.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't seem like a stickler. But definitely overreacted to the flowers specifically. And mm-hmm. It's interesting because I felt like she was being really standoffish with Danny in the previous episode. But then now in this episode, there's a lot more attempting to reach out, Yeah. Like she reaches out to her when she sees her crying. And then even this, she kind of blows up about the flowers, but then she sort of tries to, mitigate her own outburst. Yeah. Which is, I felt like a change from last episode.
We're definitely doing something here. Yeah. And I think we talked last episode about the choice to kind of rebuild a scene of their introduction from other takes made this character stick out in our minds. And now as we transition to this episode, we are seeing those two characters interact very specifically to where, we are definitely doing something. I think it's fair to say we are doing something. We don't know what it is that we're quite doing yet, but I've enjoyed the two of them. I like those two scenes quite a bit. Jamie is a character that I think is intentionally like comes off as kind of rough with everyone else, mm-hmm. But seems to have a soft spot for Danny. And I love that kind of reciprocal moment of at the end of the episode of like, can we go back to the part where you're overreacting and I'm the one talking you down or something? Like, I think that's very, it's very good. I enjoyed that a whole lot. Yeah.
It was like acknowledging the fissure and actively trying to fix it. I like that too. So mm-hmm. I like it when sometimes dialogue is just, is overt,
Yes.
because the characters would be blunt about this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I think that's honestly most of the stuff I wanted to talk about this week. Do you have anything else that you? Oh, let's take the pin out of the thing I said we were going to put a pin in before we forgot, which is just, I think it is really interesting that we've kind of talked about Mike Flanagan and religion a few times throughout the course of the show so far. And, Mike Flanagan himself is an atheist. He was raised in the church, but does not have very kind things to say about it. But I think it is interesting that one of the trends we can look in through a lot of his stories so far is a lot of the priest characters, at least in these stories so far, are like good, decent people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Henry Thomas's character in the Ouija board movie. We have Father Stack here. We have, as you said, opportunities for these characters to like be the worst possible representation of what this religion could be, but so often are not, and are actually like sometimes much better interpretations of what. And I even think like Mrs. Dursley in Hill House.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right name?
Dudley.
Thank you. Wow, my brain. Yeah, Mrs. Dudley. Like, I think you could go either way on that one, but like I don't know. I do think that's such an interesting choice, as you said, to especially in reflect of what we know about Midnight Mass, a show we haven't talked about yet, but what that show is going to say and not say about religion and spirituality. I think it is such a fascinating choice to make this guy, someone that is I think that as we said, possibly the best example of Christianity, someone who has seemingly never-ending reserves of forgiveness, who is really trying to be kind and helpful, and we see kind of the headmaster. We only very briefly get to meet the headmaster character, but we see him, I think, as a very, very typical what you would think of as a Catholic school headmaster, and yet Father Stack is not that whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting because Mrs. Dudley is, well-meaning but flawed, and I think that describes a lot of these. Like even this priest, extremely well-meaning, but his only flaw is, I mean, I think it may be better to say they don't have all the answers, right? That being well-meaning isn't enough.
Yeah,
you've got to be well-meaning, and then you've got to be willing to, I don't know, go the extra mile or something.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's, I kind of like that we don't fall into the standard sort of, modern thing where it's just like, people who have faith are stupid and actually morally bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like they're often trying really hard to do good in a world that is complicated, and they have made a series of choices that are maybe difficult to comprehend, but they're often very good people, actually.
Yeah.
You see amazing stories in the news all the time of clergy of various stripes just like putting themselves at incredible risk to do some heroic thing, and it's like, it's because they spent their whole life like trying to be that guy, and then they were in that situation,
no, I'm kind of creating a new theory in my head as we speak right now, that maybe Flanagan's view on this stuff is less religion itself is inherently bad and evil, and more just these people, perhaps in his estimation, are not fully equipped to handle the things that life's going to throw at you. I think that's a great example of Father Stack, is he's presented with this kid, this problem, and his faith and his Christianity and his belief in this is how the world works takes him really, really far, but ultimately not quite far enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same thing you could say about Mrs. Dudley, right? That her view on these things takes her quite far, but not far enough. And maybe you can even say the same thing about Henry Thomas's priest character in Ouija, that like he dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that is equipped to kind of know what's going on here and completely sense what's going on here, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like religion is perhaps this very powerful tool. And I'm saying I am. Let's just make. I'm going to state this definitively. I am not sharing my opinion on religion. I am not even sharing Mike Flanagan's definitive opinion on religion. I am sharing an interpretation of what his religious characters could possibly be saying.
Mm-hmm.
That the problem with these things is when you that is the only thing you are equipped with to deal with the shit that life is going to throw at you. He just feels like maybe it's not good enough, that we need more than that. There needs to be more than that.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you there. It's not going to get you through the worst possible thing. Or maybe stop being so broad with it. Maybe it's just personally like, it's not going to get me. Like this is not helping me specifically. This is not what's getting me through the hardest parts of life. This is like the idea of Father Stack saying, hey, it wasn't very fair to the pigs that Jesus did to the pigs, right? And Father Stack goes, yeah, man, I don't fucking know. That's God for you.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a satisfying answer.
Yeah.
That's not like that doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't get me anywhere.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the overarching thesis. And we'll see, right? We know we got Midnight Mass coming. That is of course going to be his biggest dive into this whole thing so far, but definitely all this stuff is on my mind.
Yeah. It just makes me think back to the first time we talked about this on this show, which was, the one before Oculus,
Absentia.
the Absentia, where it's very subtle, right? It's early, I think, early in his career, maybe he's still formulating these ideas, but the sentiment to me is like, you got this character who wasn't religious, but she's found religion, and she puts a cross on her wall, and she prays to the cross, and she prays every night, and like you just said, it's not enough. It's not a story about how her faith allowed her to defeat the creature and win the day. Subtextually, it's about how the faith was in fact not enough.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that's really. We'll just have to keep exploring this, because I agree with you that. I think maybe the question I have after this exchange that you and I have just had is like, what is that extra thing that is required? What because clearly faith is not enough, but what is the thing that is required in addition to faith? Or is there even an answer to that? Because I don't know if there is an answer to that.
Yeah, maybe that is the eternal question. Like,
yeah.
What do we need to get through this life?
Yeah.
I don't know. Love, baby.
Love. It is love.
Love is all you need.
Love is all you need. Love is all you need.
No, I love this. I think it's really fun to explore these things, even if we're just shooting in the dark.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying it, and I appreciate that all these characters are complex. And I think there's plenty of opportunity to talk about this more as we go. But I just love that Father Stack is this rich, rewarding, maybe one and done character. We might not even see him again. But he was a joy to witness in the show. I really felt for him and his earnest attempts to help this kid out that he was just ultimately not equipped for.
Yep, me too.
There are kind of a lot in the show. I haven't pointed this out yet, but there are a lot of connecting tissues to the first season as well that I haven't really talked to you about yet. There's things that the show does that's really cute. The one of them that I wanted to mention in this episode is Flora's letter to Miles saying "come home." The "come home" written on the letter matches perfectly to the "come home" Eleanor writing on the wall of Hill House. It is the same. And the show will do this a few times throughout the course of it. It's fun kind of throwback to the first season. So cool. Just wanted to point that out for you.
Did not notice that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. Do you see any hidden ghosts?
I saw the ghost that we were obviously supposed to see.
Yeah.
I saw the one in the basement, and I saw one of the Plague Doctor ghosts.
Nice.
The one when they were playing hide and seek, and she kind of looks into a room, and there's just a clear Plague Doctor silhouette with like there's even like a highlight on the nose coming down.
There's actually a really cool one if you want to go back and look when Mrs. Gross and Owen are sitting at the kitchen table in the kitchen. one of the chairs on the other side of the table from them just has like hands
Mm.
poking out of it. So there's just something under the table
Oh.
right there in broad daylight. It's very fun. Very
That's
fun.
great.
I'm so glad he continued to do this in this show.
Yeah. Delightful.
All right. Is that it?
Yeah.
We
that's
done?
it.
Did we do
Yep,
it?
Let's do it.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, that is episode 2, The Pupil. I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you.
Me too.
That was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our discussion question. What did we ask of the people 2 weeks ago? This was, I believe, on our final episode covering Henry James and his short stories. We happened to read 2 short stories that were like 40 years apart in that episode. So we asked this question.
What's your favorite pair of works of art that demonstrate an artist's growth over time? And people really like this one. We got a lot of answers for this one, which I think is great.
Mhm.
And we're going to read some of those now. First, Busy Dad 82 said, there's so many examples, but I have to limit myself to one. I have to go with Tom Waits and his albums Closing Time, 1973, and Mule Variations, 1999. At the beginning of his career, Tom was typecast as a sort of beatnik balladeer, influences steeped in folk and blues with a dash of jazz. As he went on, he incorporated much more diverse influences from Broadway musicals to German opera. His career-defining Frank trilogy in the 80s was such a jarring left turn from what he'd been previously writing, you'd be forgiven if you didn't know it was him. Which brings me to Mule Variations, an absolutely brilliant collection of songs that combines Americana so gritty you'll be picking the sand out of your teeth, soulful gospel, and the surreal avant-garde of the spoken word piece, What's He Building in There? If you've never listened to Old Tom, I highly recommend pretty much anything. The through line of his work is generally the flawed characters you see in the places you grew up, with their imperfect lives and loves, and looking for the beauty in a rusted-out pickup truck, or finding the musicality in the creak of old floorboards. Cool.
That's great.
You may have just sold me on Tom Waits. I don't think I've ever known or listened to Tom Waits. I'm sure I've heard it at some point.
I'm looking up right now if I've listened to anything by Tom Waits. I'm sure I have at some point, but I probably didn't know that I was listening to Tom Waits. That's really cool, though.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same place where, like, I don't know. I know there's these musical artists who they're not like popular, but you've heard their name and their fans would die for them. That's where Tom Waits is situated in my mind.
Yeah. I will definitely have to take a look at these albums. That's great. All right, Pear Jane says, this is probably the easiest answer, but I spent more time studying Stephen King than any other single artist in my life, and the breadth of his work and how he uses his personal life amplifies the markers of his growth. I started reading him as a 6th grader, and my own trajectory as a writer and reader grew with him. In the 90s, when I entered high school, college, and young adulthood, I remember consciously recognizing that he no longer used parenthetical asides in his writing, although I don't remember which book it was. I liked the parentheticals, but they also felt like a bit of a cheat, the flourish of a young writer who was trying something daring. It was the first time I thought, oh, he's getting better as a writer about any author, and a big moment for me to recognize my own habits. Throughout the 1980s, he used them less and less until they completely dried up. He simply stopped needing them because he probably realized whatever they were doing should be integrated into the prose. I think Hearts in Atlantis was his big turning point. It simply feels more writerly, for lack of a better term. He continued maturing, finishing The Dark Tower, delivering on some solid ghost stories in the early 2000s, and then publishing 11/22/63, which is one of my favorite rereads. The writing in that novel is tighter, better, and more engaging than any of his other epic works, save it. I enjoyed The Stand, but it still has long, interminable portions, and he often ups and forgets characters entirely. Franny. But 11/22/63 is well-constructed, well-paced narrative built around complex relationships, a terrific premise, and has none of the crutches he used in his early works. That Stephen King is a pretty good writer.
We like him too. Him too.
He's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it almost goes without saying that we agree, because we also watched his career over many years, although it was in fast forward for me. But
I mean, I did the chronological read/reread thing, so I got to witness this firsthand over the course of 4 or 5 years it took me to do that. And I mean, it's just factually true. Like, and like, that's like, that's, I think as a writer, I would have to guess you want to hear that, right? You want to hear that you got better over time. Like, I don't think anyone wants to hear that, oh yeah, Mike, Absentia was your best film, and then it really went downhill from there. You peaked on the first or second thing,
right?
And then you really haven't gotten any better since then.
Funnily enough, we find that to be the case with a lot of the directors we cover in our Deconstructing Director series on the Doofcast, where it's like the first or second movie is the one that we ultimately say is our favorite. But
that, I mean, maybe that's for different reasons than just like skill, because like I mean, it is true that like The Shining is one of his first books and is an incredible novel, like one of the all-time great novels. But like great and best written, I think, are sometimes different terms. Because like I like it better than 11/22/63. I think it's probably true that like objectively 11/22/63 is better written. That feels weird to say, but I think it's probably just true. But
maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think one thing, okay, so just to go on this tangent for a second, I think very often the reason why we like a director's first work, and maybe if they've done like, 8 movies, it's maybe because they gave their most passionate and raw articulation of the ideas that interest them in their first or second movie. And then it felt like the rest of the movies were like rehashing the same thing with, superficially better style, but no greater depth or feeling. And I think the thing about Stephen King is he's actually changed what he's interested in over the years too. I think this is one thing we talked about when we did, I think it was season 3.
Sure.
Where one of the things you did for us was you picked out books from different time periods. And that was one thing we noticed is like not only did his style change, but also just like the subject matter of what he was interested in shifted over time. And I think that actually allowed him to say some fresh things because he wasn't as interested in women's issues in his earlier books as he was in his later books.
Yeah.
And then, you get a whole new underlying thematic structure in addition to just the style. Anyway, cool. Good answer.
Totally. Yeah. Great answer.
Falcon 41098 says, for the discussion, I'm going to talk about Miles Davis. Right off the bat, I'd like to clarify that I'm nowhere close to an expert. That said, watching his progression from being a sideman to the legendary Charlie Parker to leading several of his own bands, both acoustic and electric, is proof of an artist who literally refused to stop changing and developing their craft. I started with Birth of the Cool, a 1957 album that features short, tight compositions played by a group of 9 musicians. He invented cool jazz with this album. Then he made Kind of Blue, the most successful jazz album of all time, in 1959, and created modal jazz. Miles launched the careers of countless legendary musicians, including John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Herbie Hancock, and Wayne Shorter, using their talents to help create new genres with practically every album he released. To wrap up Miles Davis's later electric period in the late 1960s and 70s, Bitches Brew, In a Silent Way, was another example of him staying on top of music trends to create something new, taking elements of rock to form the basis of jazz fusion. In my opinion, this dude was straight up the apotheosis of all jazz musicians. It's great.
Yeah. Again, an artist that I've definitely, of course, listened to a lot, but never studied. Really?
Yeah.
Or thought about?
Yeah,
so.
I don't know that I could pick out his style from a lineup, but
yeah, probably not.
That's another musician whose name whose fans would die for them.
Yep. Next we have Frequent Peanut 5092, who says, I'm going to go with James Gunn. He started out writing some weird screenplays. His first credit, Tromeo and Juliet, as per IMDb. He was paid $150 for the script, and it is out there. Lots of B horror films. Slither, a horror story mixed with quirky humor where his bromance with Nathan Fillion began. Gross and yet so heartfelt. The remake of Dawn of the Dead, which was news to me, and yet I should have known with the zombie baby. He made his name as a director with Guardians, arguably some of the best MCU films, where he's refined his quirky offbeat humor. His stories are heartfelt, yet whimsical, farcical, and yet have so much depth. He then took the Suicide Squad franchise and elevated it from the mediocre one-off which was barely held together by a good cast and lots of catchy music, to something with real substance, and now has taken on the Feige role at DC, and maybe, just maybe, they have a chance of taking the comic book gauntlet from the failing MCU. His growth as a writer-director is astonishing. One could argue he's mellowed in his old age or matured. He still has that edge evidenced by the opening scene of Suicide Squad, where he just kills off everyone, but has tamed it enough just to squeak by mainstream Hollywood standards. I think this is a great answer because I think definitely if you look at like James Gunn's early career, he has like the edginess is like the most important thing to him, that he like wants to, and that's even true of like the tweets and the shit that got him in trouble and initially fired from Guardians 3, right? That he was this person that was trying to be edgy, trying to make people uncomfortable, trying to do that thing above all else. And it doesn't say his movies didn't have any heart in them. They still did, but like that was the most important thing. And you can see that shift over time to where, you know, like there's sometimes that I'm just allergic to James Gunn stuff, but like I think when he's at his best, it's a director that understands like the heart of the characters and really makes these fun action sequences, but also these movies that like have a lot of that heart. Like Guardians 2, man. Guardians 2 is such a wonderful movie and character study of a film that managed to exist in this crazy MCU thing. I think that's why, like, when all the firing and tweet stuff happened, I was like, this is the guy you're going to do with this. Someone who is like, if you want a poster child of someone who has changed from the person who made the bad tweets, like this is it. Like this guy is completely different from that person now. And this is the person we're going to punish for dumb shit he said online 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Like it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I'm glad that all worked out for him.
Right. But I would say this is better than he could have possibly hoped for if he had stayed with Marvel. So yeah. Pretty funny actually in the end.
Yep. I know you haven't watched any of Peacemaker, his television show spinoff from the Suicide Squad movie mentioned here, but it's very good. It's pure James Gunn in every possible way.
I heard a lot of good stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. DJ Nedelko says probably some bias here from one of your dissecting directors series, but the one-to-one comparison of Ridley Scott's The Duelists, 1977, and The Last Duel, 2021, shows growth in a few different ways. Both stories thematically focus on male honor and pride, but The Last Duel was set in such a grander scale in terms of what was at stake and essentially centralized on the female character rather than the males. Ridley expanded from telling a simple story about two men unable to settle their disputes to an impactful retelling of true history. Next, the use of the Rashomon effect in The Last Duel was such an effective way to not only tell the story, but to give us a deeper understanding of what each character perceives of themselves and how they viewed certain events in time. Finally, not everyone can hit the nail on the head every time they create something big, but I feel like with The Last Duel, Ridley Scott was taking some aspects / framing ideas from his earlier movies and making them better to tell a solid story. The making of movies has changed a lot over the last 40 years, and for the director to be adaptable and accepting of those changes as they proceed through their own personal life says a lot about individual growth as well. Ridley had some bangers throughout the years, Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, and notable not-so-good movies, but comparing these two specific works seemed like a good answer, specifically because the word duel in each title, and I couldn't pass it up. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think we even did talk about how funny it was and how he's really got our work cut out for us by doing two movies that are so directly comparable over 40 years apart. That was a good favor he did for us. And yeah, I mean that remains possibly my favorite deconstructing directors series that we've done over on the Doofcast feed. And even the movies we didn't like were good conversations, I thought.
I think it was one of my favorites in retrospect. I think in the middle of it took like a whole year of doing nothing but watching Ridley Scott films, and that got a little old after a while, especially when we hit a stretch of, man, all these movies are kind of not good. But yeah, I think in looking back on it, I agree with you, especially like I loved The Last Duel, and I think if you take away one thing from this answer, folks listening, go watch that movie. It's it's really excellent, and it was underseen. And I think it's just one of his best works.
Yeah.
So I think it is.
Right.
It is a great example. That is a very good answer.
Yeah.
I like this a lot.
The phenomenon was a bunch of beautifully directed, poorly written movies for a stretch there.
Yep. Yep.
All right, and then we're just going to sum up the rest of the answers. Thanks to everyone for contributing. Hans Bacchus, R23PO, gets me every time. Pink Floyd's journey from the psychedelic nursery rhyme chaos of The Piper at the Gates of Dawn to the epic introspective concept album The Wall.
Hey, one music one that I actually know
Yeah.
and know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Fault Medium chooses Van Gogh's evolution from realistic early paintings like Still Life with Cabbage and Clogs to impressionistic masterpieces like Starry Night. Odin's
what do you think is in the painting Still Life with Cabbage and Clogs?
I'm going to guess that there's some shoes and a vegetable.
Correct.
Okay. Odin's Ghost 31 selects Tom Brady's 20-year journey from nearly undrafted to record-breaking quarterback as an example of sustained improvement in an athletic craft. That's cool.
I love when you say the word quarterback. It sounds like you say that word all the time.
Quarterback. Yeah. Yeah. Don Zest says Mark Maron's WTF podcast evolving from interviewing any comedian to in-depth conversations with nearly every celebrity and person of interest. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. There's a few podcasters I could name who went from very small time to very, very, very big time. And it's, especially if you got in early with them, then you feel, that little parasocial jolt.
Very fitting because Maron just hung up the old microphone.
Oh.
He's done. WTF is over. One of the first podcasts ever. He's done with it.
That's interesting. So
his last guest was Barack Obama.
Wow. Okay. That is a journey.
That would be more impressive if he hadn't already interviewed Barack Obama while he was president in 2015. So,
yeah. The problem with a lot of these guys is they peak and then there's nowhere to go,
Yeah.
It's like,
once you interview the sitting president, I don't know where else you can go from there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally, Amaranth Phantom notes the symbolic spring names. I think
this wasn't an answer,
yeah.
but just a specific.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this wasn't a discussion question answer. They note symbolic names of springs in The Beast in the Jungle, and the characters living in autumn and May dying in the time of rebirth. So they're making a astute observation about The Beast in the Jungle, which
that's really cool.
One of the stories that we read and enjoyed. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Those are some great answers. I really enjoyed this. I like that it was not just like books or movies. That was the gamut. We actually like the most amount of answers we had was from musicians. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciated the sports one just for variety.
Yeah, me too. Except I fucking hate Tom Brady. So. I don't actually. I hated him when I was playing against him. But
of course,
he's retired now. He's a subpar announcer. Now,
yeah, he's an elder statesman of the sport, so
All right, Matt. Our question for next week. What are we asking the folks?
What's your favorite boarding school story?
I couldn't resist. There's so many great boarding school books and movies and everything in between out there. I thought it'd just be fun to highlight some of our favorite of those.
Yeah, so many come to mind.
Yeah. All right, but that is going to do it for us this week. Next week, Bly Manor will continue with episode 3. This episode, Matt, is titled The Two Faces, Part 1.
We read that.
Well, we didn't. It wasn't called Part 1 when we read it, though.
You're right.
That's weird.
That is weird.
What could it possibly mean?
Did we read the wrong story? Were we supposed to read The Two Faces Part 1?
No. We're good.
Okay. Remember, you can catch us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com or over on X at flanaganswake19. And of course, the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia is the best place to answer those discussion questions. You can find us on video on YouTube every week. We didn't make any particularly goofy faces at the camera this week, but sometimes we do, and you don't want to miss that.
Also, if you want to support us in some other ways, you can purchase our merchandise over at doofmedia.myshopify.com. I think we just got a new piece of merch in just today as we record this episode, but of course that'll be in the past for you guys. We have a Midnight Mass mug designed by our wonderful designer called Crockett Island Cat Cafe. If you haven't seen Midnight Mass, you're not going to understand this reference, but if you have, you're going to love this mug. It's also on a shirt. It's great. We have so many wonderful pieces of merchandise, and I believe the sale will still be going on next week while you listen to this. There is a 10% off sale right now for all of our Halloween spooky themed items, which are frankly most of them. It's some great stuff. Please go check it out. doofmedia.myshopify.com.
Yeah, and if you like any of our shows and you want to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon over at patreon.com/doofmedia. We released a bonus podcast recently about a trip that me and Scott and our friend took to New Mexico. It was really funny. I felt funny conversation, and you can listen to it if you're a patron.
Yep. But if you cannot afford to be a patron, that is okay. You can still help us out. Please share the podcast. Please leave us rating and reviews on those podcasting platforms that you listen on. We do have another review for the people here today, Matt. We have a 5-star review from Slim Pickens 757, who says, "Love Matt and Scott." Interesting. You put his name first. He says, "Came over once Kingslingers ended, and I'm always happy to hear those two chat about anything. They're always very insightful and fun to listen to. Their in-depth breakdowns of any piece of media always makes my workday go by faster." Well, that is the greatest gift we can give to anyone, is make their workday go by faster. So thank you. Me working on this podcast instead of doing my day job is also making my workday go by faster.
That's the spirit.
We're on the same boat. But thank you so much for those kind words. And thanks to everyone who continues to send those reviews in. As we always say, they do actually really help us. So please keep them coming.
Thank you.
All right. We're done. We did it. Next week, episode 3, which will put us a third of the way through Bly Manor already. Wow. The Two Faces, part 1. Which face, Matt? Which face of the two do you think we're going to see next week?
I think we're going to see both. We're going to see the good one, and we're going to see the mean one.
Well, but then what's part 2?
Oh, I think we're going to see the good one first. Then we're going to see the mean one second.
What an idiot. All right, folks. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan.